Do you hear?
We hear.
Robber mother lived with robber father and their brood of children up in Yainga forest in the robber's cave. Robber father dared not leave the forest, for he was an outlawed man. But robber mother would sometimes go into the village on a begging tour with her children in tow. And wherever she went, whatever she asked for or demanded was given to her. For they knew that she was not above coming back the next night and setting fire to the house if she had not been well received. Do you hear?
We hear.
Well, on this day she went, robber mother and her 5 children, each of them in rough leather clothes, birch bark shoes, each with a sack on his back as large as themselves. And as they went from house to house, they happened to go to Uvid, which at that time was a cloister. And robber mother rang the bell at the cloister gate, for the cloister was surrounded by a high stone wall. And the monk who answered, he agreed to give them 6 round bread cakes, one for herself and one for each of the 5 youngsters. Well, robber mother stood there waiting. And while she waited, the 5 youngsters ran about, and just as the bread cakes were being lowered down in the wicket, one of the youngsters came up and tugged at her skirt. This was a signal that he had found something of interest to her. And so after receiving the bread cake, she followed him at once. Do you hear?
We hear.
Well, the youngster led her around the stone wall, and to the side there was a door that was left partly open. Robber mother pushed the door further open and stepped inside without asking leave, as she was wont to do. Inside she found a magnificent garden. Abbot Hans was the leader of Ovid Cloister at that time. Hey, Abbot Hans!
Hi, Abbot Hans.
And Abbot Hans had a great love of herbs and flowers. And he had gathered them from all around. And when she beheld that garden, her eyes glistened. It was high summertide. She could see the reds, the blues, the yellows, and the pinks of the flowers. But then an indulgent smile spread across her face. And she began to walk with the children in tow through the garden. Now, there was a lay brother. The lay brother was pulling weeds. He is the one who had left the back gate open, for he was throwing the weeds on the rubbish heap outside the door. Well, when he looked up and saw robber mother, he ordered her to leave at once. She paid no heed. It was as if she didn't even hear him. She just went on her way. He thought perhaps that she didn't understand, and so he stopped her again, and he said that they must leave at once. Robber mother had been walking with bent back, carrying her sack, but now she straightened herself to her full height. Hey, robber mother!
Hi, robber mother.
Do you not know me? I am robber mother of Yainga forest. So touch me if you dare. He had heard of robber mother, and so he spoke reasonably to her. He says, robber mother, I am sorry. I just am trying to tell you that you must leave. No woman in the land is allowed within the walls of this cloister, and nor are children. And it was my fault. I left the back gate open, and if the monks find out, they will be upset with me. They might force me to leave the cloister. His words were wasted on robber mother, who just walked on by and continued looking at the flowers. Do you hear?
We hear.
The lay brother did not know what to do. Hey, lay brother!
Hi, lay brother.
So he went back into the cloister and he found two stalwart monks. They came out. And when they saw this woman and her children, they didn't see why they should put up with her. They would toss her out at once. When Robber Mother saw them, she planted her 2 feet and saw that now it meant business. The monks came at her, and she let out a perfect volley of shrieks. And she ran at them, as did the children. She started biting and clawing at them. The monks soon learned that she and her children could overpower them. They ran back for reinforcements. Do you hear?
We hear.
Well, as they were running back, Abbot Hans, hearing all this noise, he came out and he asked these 2 monks and the lay brother what was happening. They explained, they had to explain, how Robber Mother was overpowering them. When Abbot Hans learned that they had attempted to use force, he upbraided them, and he sent the 2 monks back to their work. And then Abbot Hans, old and weak as he was, he went back out toward the garden, accompanied only by the lay brother. Hey, Abbot Hans.
Aye, Abbot Hans.
When he got there, he saw the old woman. She was looking at the flowers. At some she smiled. At others she shook her head. Abbot Hans, when he looked at the Robber Mother, as wild and terrible as she looked, he had to admire that she had fought with 3 monks just to view the garden in peace. Abbot Hans approached her from behind, and he spoke. Madam, does the garden please you? Robber Mother turned at once. She expected to be overpowered, but when she saw the slight frame, the white hair of the old monk, she answered peaceably. When I first saw this garden, I thought I had never seen one more beautiful. But then I remembered. And this cannot be compared with the garden that I know of. Abbot Hans was rather proud of his garden, and his cheeks turned a bit red. And the lay brother was equally proud of the garden, and the lay brother now spoke up. Hey, lay brother.
Aye, lay brother.
Robber Mother, this is Abbot Hans, who with much care and diligence has gathered these flowers from far and wide, creating the finest garden in all of Skåne. And it is not right that you should be upbraiding him for this garden. It must be a fine garden you have. It must be a fine garden that you have in Yainga Forest. And Robber Mother said, I do not mean to upbraid or tease him. I am only saying, if you could see the garden of which I am thinking, you would pick these flowers up like weeds and toss them all into the rubbish heap. Well, the lay brother, hearing this, he continued the argument. Oh, you speak this way only to tease us. Oh, it must be a fine garden. It must be a fine garden that you have among the fir trees of Yainga Forest. And now Robber Mother, to see her word was doubted, she now grew crimson with rage. You monks, who are holy men, surely must know that each year, on Christmas Eve, Yainga Forest dresses itself in holiday bloom. I have seen it year after year. Well, the lay brother was about to argue further, but Abbot Hans motioned for him to stop. For ever since he was a little boy, Abbot Hans had heard of the Christmas garden that bloomed every Christmas Eve in Yainga Forest. He had always longed to see it himself, but he had never had an opportunity. And now Abbot Hans spoke. Hey, Abbot Hans.
Hi, Abbot Hans.
Rabbi Mother, I would love to see this garden. If you would only send one of your youngsters, I could follow on horseback, and I would never betray you. I would do you good in so much as it lay within my power, and I could see this garden for myself. Rabbi Mother said no at first, for she thought what might happen to Rabbi Father if they found out where the robber's cave was located. But then her desire to show of the garden that she knew, that got the best of her, and she spoke to Abbot Hans. You may come, Abbot Hans, but more than one traveler may not come with you. And you are not to waylay us or trap us, as sure as you are holy men. Abbot Hans gave his word, and Rabbi Mother went on her way. Do you hear?
We hear.
After she had gone, Abbot Hans ordered the lay brother to tell no one of this plan. For Abbot Hans was afraid that if the monks found out that he was going up to Yainga Forest in the dead of winter, that they would not allow the old man to travel. A few days after this, Archbishop Absalon visited Ovid Cloister. Hey, Archbishop!
Hi, Archbishop.
And the Archbishop stayed for the night, and Abbot Hans showed the Archbishop around. He showed him the herb garden. That got him to thinking of Rabbi Mother. And then Abbot Hans said to the Archbishop, Hey, Abbot Hans.
Hi, Abbot Hans.
Archbishop, Rabbi Father dwells in Robber's Cave up in Yainga Forest. Why not offer a letter of pardon for him so that he can come and live among honest people? As things are now, his children are growing up worse than himself. He'll soon have a whole gang of robbers to deal with up there in the forest. And Archbishop Absalon answered, Hey, Archbishop.
Hi, Archbishop.
Abbot Hans, it will be better for all if that forest robber stays in the forest away from the good, honest people. Well, now, Abbot Hans grew zealous, and he said, Archbishop, do you know that in Yainga Forest, every year on Christmas Eve, it shows itself in wondrous bloom to honor the birth of our Savior? If such miracles will be shown to these robbers, surely they are not so bad that we might grant them some pardon. Abbot Hans, said the Archbishop. Hey, Archbishop.
Hi, Archbishop.
Abbot Hans, the day that you bring me a flower, a Christmas flower, from Yainga Forest, I will grant you pardons for all the criminals that you may choose to plead for. Clearly, the Archbishop did not believe in the Christmas garden. Do you hear?
We hear.
But Abbot Hans said, Archbishop, I thank you. I thank you for your word, and I will bring the flower to you. Do you hear?
We hear.
Abbot Hans got his wish. On Christmas Eve, Rabbi Mother sent her youngster, And Abbot Hans followed on horseback with the lay brother at his side, the lay brother who had spoken to Robber Mother earlier. And they followed them, and as they went along, everywhere, Abbot Hans saw that they were preparing for Christmas. In the peasant settlements, the bathhouses were being warmed for the afternoon bathing. People were bringing meat and breads out of the larders. The men were bringing great sheaves of straw out of the barns to be strewn upon the floor for the parties. And outside each church, Abbot Hans saw the parsons decorating for the Christmas holiday. Do you hear?
We hear.
And Abbot Hans thought to himself, but he would see a Christmas experience even more glorious than this. These were the thoughts of Abbot Hans. They were not the thoughts of the lay brother. Do you hear?
We hear.
The lay brother was sure that Robber Mother had quite cunningly set a trap for Abbot Hans, and that she had intended for Robber Father to capture him. And as they went further and further towards Yainga Forest, the lay brother kept arguing and saying, please, let us turn back, Abbot Hans. Let us turn back, there is still time. But Abbot Hans paid no attention to his lamentations. The fields were left behind. They went into the forest. They came upon the stony roads, covered with burrs. They passed through swamp and marsh, windfall and bramble. Over the creeks there were no bridges. There were no boards. And they went on through the rough terrain, and it grew colder and colder as they went. Finally, they came to a forest clearing, and there were fir trees about, and there was the wall of the mountain, and as Robber Mother's child went ahead, Abbot Hans could see that he was heading toward a rough-hewn door in the wall. They had arrived at the robber's cave. Do you hear?
We hear.
The child pushed the door open, and Abbot Hans and the lay brother stepped inside. Here was wretchedness and poverty. Bare stone walls. Rough-hewn beds of pine and moss along the walls. There was a fire burning in the middle of the room, and Robber Mother sat by the fire with her children. Come in out from the cold, Abbot Hans, and bring the horses in with you so they're not destroyed by the night cold. They all came in. And then the lay brother saw that on one of the beds, facing the wall, perhaps asleep, was Robber Father. Robber Mother spoke in a tone as haughty and dictatorial as any well-to-do peasant woman. Abbot Hans, come, warm yourself by the fire. And if you brought food with you, eat, for you would not care to touch the food that we in the forest survive upon. Abbot Hans followed instructions. He opened his food sack. He ate a bit, but he was exhausted from the long journey. And Robber Mother said, if you're tired, you may rest on one of the beds there. You need not worry about oversleeping, for I will awaken you in time to see that which you have come to see. The lay brother was also assigned a bed. Abbot Hans went and fell asleep. The lay brother went to his bed, but he would not sleep, for he thought that he must keep an eye out, watching for Robber Father, who might at any moment attempt to attack Abbot Hans. But the lay brother was weary, and in course of time he too fell asleep. Do you hear?
We hear.
When the lay brother awoke, he saw that Abbot Hans had woken before him and was sitting by the fire with Robber Mother. The two were talking, and Robber Father also sat by the fire, his back to Abbot Hans, as if he were not listening. Abbot Hans was telling all he had seen to Robber Mother, certainly bringing back memories from her own childhood, from her own youth. I feel so badly, Robber Mother, that your children, that they can't go about dressed in the holiday dress, that they can't tumble in the Christmas straw. And in that moment, Robber Father turned towards Abbot Hans with fist uplifted. You miserable monk! Do you not know that I am an outlawed man? And you try to steal from me my wife and children? Abbot Hans looked at Robber Father. Do you hear?
We hear.
There was no fear in Abbot Hans' face. It is my purpose to get a letter of pardon for you from Archbishop Absalon. The words were barely out of his mouth when Robber Father and Robber Mother began to laugh. A letter of pardon from Absalon. They knew well the kind of mercy an outlaw could receive from Archbishop Absalon. A letter of pardon from Absalon. I promise you, the day that you bring me a letter of pardon from Archbishop Absalon, I promise I will never steal so much as a Christmas goose again. And then Robber Mother spoke. Do you hear?
We hear.
Abbot Hans, you are talking so much we are forgetting to listen. Even now, I can hear the Christmas bells ringing. Immediately, Robber Mother, Robber Father, the 5 children, and Abbot Hans and the lay brother went out of the cave. And they could hear bells ringing. But it was cold, bitter cold and dark. And in that moment, Abbot Hans thought to himself, how could it be possible that this would be a summer garden? What was I dreaming? What was I thinking that such a thing could... Then there was an enormous flash of light. And then it was dark again. And then the light came back. This time pushing through the stark trees like a shimmering mist. And Abbot Hans realized that the snow was gone. The earth had a green covering. The ferns were sending up their fronds. Moss tufts were thickening and raising themselves. Forest blossoms were rising up, their thick buds already showing a bit of color. Abbot Hans' heart beat quickly. Tears filled his eyes. Old man that I am, yet I am given this privilege to see this miracle. It grew dark again. And Abbot Hans was afraid that the darkness was back, but no. In another instant, there was light again. And now, the leaves on the trees burst into bloom. It was as though thousands of green butterflies suddenly landed on all the branches. And it was not just the trees and the plants. The small birds, grosbeaks, were flying from branch to branch. A woodpecker was heard, hammering away in the distance. A flock of starlings were circling around and lighting upon a fir tree. The darkness came back, but only for a second. And then the light came again. and it had a warmth to it. It came with a southerly wind, and as the light came forward, blueberries and lingonberries ripened. A crane and some wild geese were shrieking overhead. Baby squirrels were playing upon the branches of a tree. It was all happening so fast now. It was happening so fast that there was no time for Abbot Hans to think. He could only witness it with his eyes that could see, with his ears that could hear, with his nose that could smell, and with the next wave came the aroma, the scent of newly plowed acres. And he could hear far off in the distance the milkmaids coaxing their cows, the jingling of the sheep's bells, and upon the pine and balsam, the red cones, there were so many they were like crimson mantles upon the trees. Do you hear?
We hear.
The darkness came again, but only for a moment. And then the light came. And now, the mother fox came out of her lair with her black-legged young. She went up and she brushed up against the skirt of Robber Mother, who bent and praised her and her young. And Robber Mother's children, they shrieked in delight. They shrieked in delight. They stuffed their mouths with wild strawberries. Abbot Hans picked up a wild strawberry blossom, and the berry ripened in his hand. One of the children was playing with a litter of hares. Another was running a race with some crows that had hopped from a nest just a bit too soon. Robber Father was in the marsh. He was eating raspberries. He looked up. There was a bear at his side. Robber Father broke off a stick and hit the bear in the nose. "Keep to your own ground, you. This is my turf." The bear turned and lumbered off. Do you hear?
We hear.
And the waves of light kept coming. Now there were butterflies. They looked like flying lilies. They were so large. Honey dripped from an oak tree down upon the ground, down the trunk. The bees were all active. And Abbot Hans, he thought again of the flower that he was to get for Archbishop Absalon. But each new flower was more beautiful than the one that he had just seen the moment before. And he wanted to bring the loveliest flower of all. And the waves of light kept rolling in, until the very air was glittering with light. All the joy, brightness, and warmth of summer were there with Abbot Hans, and he felt that no greater happiness could come to him upon earth, but the waves of light kept coming. Do you hear?
We hear.
And then Abbot Hans sensed something coming from an infinite distance. He felt himself enveloped in a celestial atmosphere. Yes, the glories of heaven were approaching. All grew still. The birds stopped singing. The flowers stopped growing. The young foxes played no more. And they could hear the faint murmur of harp music and soft, angelic, celestial song. Robber Father brought his hands together. He bent down upon his knee. I had never thought that even in this life, that I should hear angels singing Christmas carols. But the lay brother had a very different experience. Do you hear?
We hear.
While the lay brother saw all the same things, he was filled with dark thoughts. This cannot be a miracle. This cannot be sent from God. God would not send this miracle to these robbers. This is some illusion. This is some delusion from some evil force. Some evil is upon us. Abbot Hans looked up. He could see the brightness of the angels getting near. The lay brother saw it as well, but he thought it just some dread evil. Now all this time, the birds had been circling around Abbot Hans. Some had landed on his shoulders, some in his hands. But no bird had landed in the lay brother's hand. No fox had played at his feet. But as the angels drew near, a forest dove took up courage, and she flew down towards the lay brother. At that moment, Abbot Hans lowered his head, and he could feel the feathery touch of the angel's wings. And in that same moment, that forest dove landed on the lay brother's shoulder, and the dove cooed and just touched the lay brother's cheek. But the lay brother thought that some dread evil was upon him, and so he cried out, "Go away from me, back to where you have come!" And he struck the dove. In an instant, all was dark and cold. The angels turned in flight. The animals and birds flew off, ran off. The leaves all fell from the trees. Frost covered the ground. The stream which had been gurgling and burgling was now frozen and silent once again. Abbot Hans said, I can never outlive this. The angels wanted to sing Christmas carols to us. And they were turned away. They were ordered to flight. And then he remembered that he had not yet got the flower for Archbishop Absalon. He began to feel around, but the ground was freezing. Snow was coming back, covering his hands. And now he felt a great pain in his chest. And Abbot Hans fell upon the coverlet of snow. When the robber family and the lay brother had made it back into Robber's Cave, they realized that they were missing Abbot Hans. Abbot Hans.
Abbot Hans.
So they took lighted brands and they went out and they found him. They found Abbot Hans, dead upon a coverlet of snow. And now the lay brother, he began to sob. He now recognized that it was he who had turned the angels away. He now recognized that he had dashed the cup of happiness from Abbot Hans' hand. When Abbot Hans' body was carried back down to Uvid, those who care for the dead noted that he held something clutched in his dead fist. when they finally were able to pry it open, they found there 2 white root bulbs. The lay brother took these and planted them in Abbot Hans' garden. And he tended them through the spring, the summer, the fall, but nothing grew of them. And as the days grew shorter, as the cold came and the plant life was ceasing, he ceased caring for it. Do you hear?
We hear.
But on Christmas Eve, the lay brother was so reminded of Abbot Hans that he went back out into his garden, thinking of Abbot Hans, and he saw when all the other plants were as if dead, there where he had planted the root bulbs was this one plant with white flowers growing with white flowers in the snow. The lay brother called out all of the monks and told them the story of the bulbs and of what he and Abbot Hans had experienced up in Yainga Forest, the Christmas garden. And he asked if he might take a few blossoms to Archbishop Absalon. They, of course, agreed. The lay brother showed Archbishop Absalon. Archbishop, Abbot Hans has promised you a flower from the garden, the Christmas garden of Yainga Forest. And he told the Archbishop all about what had happened. The Archbishop was silent for quite some time. Lay brother, Abbot Hans has kept his word, and so I shall keep mine. We shall order a letter of pardon drawn up for Robber Father and his family. The lay brother took that letter of pardon, and he went into Robber's cave on Christmas Day. And when Robber Father saw the lay brother, he came at him with axe uplifted, and he spoke and he said, "Do you hear?"
We hear.
Robber Father said, "You monks, it must be your fault that last night Yainga Forest did not dress itself in Christmas bloom." The lay brother answered, "The fault is mine alone, and I will gladly die for it. But first I must deliver to you a letter from Abbot Hans." Robber Mother looked. The lay brother explained, "You have been granted a full pardon by Archbishop Absalon. Abbot Hans wished that your children might play in the Christmas straw, that you might enjoy the company of others at Christmas. And now you shall. Robber father could say nothing. But Robber mother spoke. Abbot Hans has kept his word, and so Robber father will keep his. He will not steal so much as a Christmas goose. The robber family left the cave, and the lay brother moved into the cave to be alone in prayer and contemplation, and in the hope that his hard-heartedness would be forgiven him. The Christmas garden of Yainga Forest never bloomed again. And of all that grew there, all that remains are the descendants of those two white root bulbs. We call them the Helleborus niger, the Christmas rose. And it is as if she could never forget that she had once bloomed in that winter garden. For as all the other plants are as if dead, the Christmas rose each year brings forth her green leaves and her yellow-white flowers, honoring the birth of the Savior. And this is a story and legend of the people of Sweden. Thank you very much. I'll tell you, actually, we had a gathering here just recently, and I said, I'm going to tell the We Red Cap. I said, I might tell another story. And I didn't say this even to Ollie, but we went to pick up our tree. Thank you, tree, for giving your life. And I remembered once about 12 or 13 years ago when we went to Oakland Park Nursery that they had the Helleborus niger. And we have one, but it hasn't been doing so well lately, and it doesn't have any flowers. Although I recently transplanted it, it's doing a bit better. And I just kind of said to myself, you know, those of you who know me know I have a little bit of a mystical bent. And I said, you know, Michael says to Michael, if they have the Christmas rose, I think that means I'm supposed to tell the story. And so for the first time in more than a decade at Oakland Park, when I asked, do you have any Helleborus? She goes, oh yeah, right over here. I'm like, oh boy, I got to get to work on that story. And because I love synchronicities, as many of you know, I was also reading this week, as many of you know, one of our primary teachers as the Vietnamese Zen Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, the late Thich Nhat Hanh. And I was reading it this week, and I came upon these words, which I decided I'd like to share with you. Oh, and let me, before I forget this, anyone who does not have a copy of A Buddhist Christian Mother Earth Christmas, 41 Days of Mindful Musings for the Yuletide Season by Ollie W. Malley and Michael R. Malley, please pick up a copy here today. Free, take one. This is what I just came upon, and so I decided I'd like to share it with you. This is from a lovely little book called The Energy of Prayer, and I won't say more about it, just a lovely little book by Thich Nhat Hanh. One day in winter, St. Francis of Assisi was practicing mindful walking, and he came upon an almond tree. He stopped before the tree, breathed, and prayed. Almond tree, tell me about God. And then, quite naturally, the almond tree blossomed into flower, even in the biting cold of winter. In the historical dimension, our daily reality, the almond tree does not yet have flowers. But in the world of the ultimate dimension, the almond tree has had flowers for tens of thousands of years. As far as the historical dimension is concerned, the Buddha lived and died, and we are not the Buddha. But as far as the ultimate dimension is concerned, we are already Buddha. So being in touch with the almond tree is a way of being in touch with God. You will not find God in an abstract idea. This is something very important. God is here with us through very concrete things. The words of the Vietnamese Zen Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh. Oh, thank you.